all I did was hear about how amazing these athletes were, and I could never play at that level.
His definition was an impact player is someone who can raise everyone else up.
That speech my mom kind of gave me was probably the biggest moment of my life.
What are we going to work on?
Yeah.
We're going to work on everything.
Right.
Everything is important.
Coach Belichick made it very clear what you needed to do. And you could either do it or you couldn't.
Hey, this is Jim Tressel, and here we are with another episode of It's All About the Team. And this might be one of the most excited I've been for an episode because I've been around athletics for my whole life. My dad was a coach and grew up next to the stadium. And so I don't know when you know you're alive, but maybe when you're 5. And so for the last 60-some years, 66 years, I've been around a lot of players and coaches, and no one has the story, and no one excites me more than Nate Ebner about, the journey. And so along with that, there's a lot of people, I suppose, that have interesting journeys and so forth, but the Nate Ebner journey and Nate Ebner's passion for the team is what this podcast is all about. And this is what we want to be able to do, is add value to people and say, hey, look, just when you see what you see on TV or Sports Center highlights, it didn't just, we didn't just wake up and got a Super Bowl ring or wake up and go to the Olympics or whatever. And so I'm excited to introduce to our viewers Nate Ebner, and I'll give a little introduction. Some people who tune in may know a little bit about you, some might not. By the end of time, we're going to make sure they know a lot and can gain a lot from things that you've learned and been through. And so I think about, it's all about the team. And in relation to Nate Ebner, I think about your dad and mom.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know how many people have read your book, but if you haven't, you should. I learned some things. We were together for about 2.5 years, something like that. So I knew a decent amount about you, but I learned more. And it's like anyone else, you have to remind yourself, you don't really know someone till you know more and the rest of the story or whatever. And that team, Ebner, of your dad and your mom, and no team is perfect, no team is without challenges. We used to always talk handle adversity, and so Nate Ebner had an unbelievable team at home. You had all those youth rugby experiences, which I don't know that much about rugby, other than I think you got to be crazy to play that. And then you had the Ohio State experience. Then you had the New England Patriots experience and the New York Giants experience, and now you're what, 40? Are you 40 now?
35.
You're 35?
Yeah.
Man, you guys are young. You're half my age. Oh my gosh. And now you have a whole nother experience you're going through in life. And so what I wanted to do for the viewers, and hoping that there might be someone that says, oh man, that makes sense to me, and now I understand more about team, or more about finishing strong, or more about what does it take to be successful. I worry a little bit that some people don't understand what it takes to be good. But so let's start with, let's assume that our viewers don't know much about Nate Ebner prior to his Ohio State acclaim and his New England Patriots. Give us a little thumbnail of Team Ebner.
Well, first, thanks for having me. It's an honor to be here, for real. And I hope I can give some insight into my different experience that I had coming up. Started up with a very, unorthodox upbringing, I would say. Very blue collar. I'd say, growing up in a junkyard is as blue collar as it gets.
So your dad owned a junkyard?
Yep, okay. Ebner's Auto Parts in Springfield, Ohio, and it's been in the family for over 100 years. 1800s is when it started, and it's kind of all I knew, But for me as a kid, it was kind of a playground at first. But then as I got older and my dad started to give me responsibility, it was a place where I think the foundations of my character were really set. And I could see the work ethic that we'd put in on a daily basis, the accountability I needed to have, responsibility like we talked about. That had to play out every day, and you start to realize like how important consistency is. And I think I became rooted in those foundational character aspects of who I was at the junkyard. And that was a great place for me coming up. And I didn't really realize how lucky I was to have that until you start to get older, you start to see other families and other kids and how their parents interact, and it just became very apparent to me that I had a very different father figure and a different upbringing, and so thankful for it, though. It definitely paved the way for me. And from there, obviously, unique upbringing through the junkyard, but also my dad played rugby. So I was exposed to this whole underground culture of rugby through my father at a young age. And just that was kind of something, we did everything together, but rugby was something that we really bonded over. I became pretty decent at it at a young age. And they didn't have kids leagues back then, so I was playing a lot of rugby with the men because there was really no other way for me to play. So I just got exposed to not only the play, but the men as well. When I was probably 13, 14 years old, being around these club rugby guys. You learn a lot about what a good culture is. I think rugby-wise, you start to see a brotherhood that's unlike any other sport, and I'm seeing it with club rugby guys in Columbus, Ohio, who have normal jobs, they work, they have families, and then they spend their extra time, building this brotherhood in the rugby community, and I always thought that was very special. Obviously went through rugby and got to the point where I was pretty decent and made it to a developmental camp when I was 16 and actually ended up making the Junior World Cup team. Played in three Junior World Cups for the under-19s and under-20s, and found my way at Ohio State through that process. And then I was kind of posed with a decision, I think, a crossroads. I wanted to play football my senior year. I didn't play football at all in high school. I played, pee-wee football and whatnot, but rugby kind of grabbed me at a young age and didn't play in high school. Wanted to play my senior year. Hilliard-Davidson won the Division I state championship my senior year, so I was like, I missed out on that. But I'd like to say they obviously didn't need me. I would have just gotten in the way. But I think it was kind of a perfect storm for me. Didn't play high school football. Was at Ohio State. All I did was hear about how amazing these athletes were, and I could never play at that level. And on top of that, when you look at the rugby community for me, or that ecosystem, I was playing against the best players in the world for years. And then once the age grade World Cups were over, it was like I'm stuck playing club rugby, which just wasn't really fulfilling me. And I wasn't going to leave college. I told my parents I'd get my degree. So all these things kind of were happening at the same time. And eventually had a conversation with my dad about, hey, I think I want to walk onto the football team at Ohio State. And from the jump, he was extremely supportive of that. He, we didn't argue, Nate, you're going to be a good rugby player. I mean, I knew I had a career in rugby professionally, but that meant leaving the United States. That meant playing in France or somewhere where I had to pick up another language. And if that was in the cards for me down the road, it was, but I wanted to see what this whole football thing was about. So we had a conversation about it. Like I said, he was supportive. He was kind of just like, if you're going to do this, you need to do it with everything. No rugby intermittently. Obviously, I played in a couple tournaments in the summer you let me play in, so I appreciate that. Because I'm getting inducted to that Hall of Fame in like a month, too, for that tournament you let me play in.
Yeah,
so
I like it.
But anyways, he was like, if you're going to do this, you need to do it with everything. No distractions. Give it all you have. And if you make it, you make it. If not, you have no regrets. And so he was on board. That was the plan. And we left dinner, and that was the last day I talked to him, last time we spoke. And the next day at the junkyard, He was murdered in a robbery gone bad, and that kind of put me in a funk. Was at a low point in my life for quite some time. Ended up dropping out of school for the quarter that we were in, semesters now, but that quarter, and just wasn't really sure. Kind of stuck between vengeance and anger and wanting to get on with it, but ultimately just not moving in a bad place until my mom came and spoke to me. And my mom, that speech my mom kind of gave me was probably the biggest moment of my life. And you know, I talk about in the book, I've had friends who've lost parents, and I've seen, you know, mothers coddle their kids because they feel like, you know, they want to make them feel better. And, you know, the biggest thing I take away from that experience with my mom was, you know, she was so gut-wrenched in tears and heartbreak for me that, you know, what she was saying to me wasn't something she wanted to say, but she knew she had to. And she just came to me and said, Nate, you need to, you know, your dad would hate to see this ruin your life. You need to live a life he would be proud of. And it was just simply that message. And, you know, that was kind of where I switched gears and was like, changed my mindset. Stopped feeling sorry for myself, starting to think about the things that I could control, which were, you know, what I do from here, not going back to the junkyard to, you know, take it out on somebody or something that wasn't productive. So I started to think about what I could control, and I really started to have this over-encompassing aspect of my dad, this idea of him that I was extremely grateful. And, you know, that gratitude for the father that he was, the time he spent, you know, with me, the lessons that he taught me, that gratitude really made me want to go forward and, like she said, make him proud. And yeah, I was very lucky to have the father that I had. When a lot of people grow up, you know, their parents are still alive. I had more of a father in 19 years than they probably did in a lifetime. And just very thankful. I knew I was lucky I had him. So I got on with it, started to train, and did the walk-on workout at Ohio State in middle of January. It was a real deal walk-on workout, not the preferred walk-ons. It was the, you know, crazy tryouts you see in the movies that are kind of funny. And there was some humor too, some of the guys that were there, but I was very serious. And I think probably a lot of guys when I came in realized how serious I was. Something different about it, because I was on a mission. It was more than me trying to put a jersey on that said Ohio State and be a part of a team so I could tell people I played football at Ohio State. That last conversation we had at dinner was about walking on at Ohio State, but doing it with the goal of making it to the NFL. That was really the goal. So, you know, it was more than just making the team and you know, having the block O. It was about playing on the field and having success.
So let's go back to Team Ebner, because when we get into the Ohio State discussions, I'm really going to pepper you with some questions.
Okay.
So it's so important on your team to have the right kind of leadership. And what really dawned on me when you talked about what your mom had the courage to do is, you know, a leader really needs to do things that are uncomfortable, because it's easier to coddle. It's easier to, you know, so, well, okay, you know, oh, you're feeling bad and you've lost your dad and, you know. And if you're going to have a great team, you're going to have leaders who have the courage to do uncomfortable things. And the other thing that jumps out at me is, it seems at times that parents want to be friends, which I'm not sure if you were at Ohio State when we had this long discussion about what a friend is. I can't remember what year it was, but we had some guys making some poor decisions and, you know, a couple bar fights and this and that, you know, and it's like, so we needed to have a little conversation. So I asked the guys to write down their definition of what a friend is. And we were in the team meeting room, and 100 guys, out. And I said, just 2 sentences. I don't want, this is not.
Not an essay.
No, right?
Yeah.
So they sent them up to the front, and so I started reading them. It's just what you'd think. A friend is someone you want to hang out with, someone you like, someone who will support you, someone who's got your back, all those normal things. Mm-hmm. But the one thing that not one guy had, which I was afraid was going to be the case, was not one guy wrote down, a friend is someone who tells you the truth. That, hey, we better get out of here, or don't talk to her that way, or,
right.
Hey, we better get to the weight room, or, hey, we better practice harder. The things that are hard to say, like your mom,
Yep.
It was killing her, I'm sure,
mm-hmm.
because she wanted to hug you, but you didn't need a hug at that moment.
Exactly right.
And that's why, as we talk about who do we hope to add value to with It's All About the Team, is teams start at home.
100%.
If we could make the biggest improvement at home, yeah, we need improvements in the business place or on teams or organizations, but if we can have that team at home, we've got a chance.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you can't put out someone else's fire if your house is on fire.
Right.
That's saying, for me, it's, that's not going to last if you go home every day and things are in shambles, but you try to keep a good face at work and build that team. Everything you go back to at home is in trouble. It's going to fall apart eventually. No, I think those two people in my life I was extremely blessed to have. When I was at Tyson's event and I spoke, I talked about how lucky I was. I don't like to talk about luck because everything I feel like I've had in my life has mostly been worked for and grit. Mm-hmm. But I was lucky for the parents I had. I had no control over that. And I talked about you and Belichick and some of the leaders that were put into my life, how lucky I was. It was kind of just what happened. You were at Ohio State when I went to Ohio State. But I was lucky to have the parents that I had. It wasn't kind of in my control. And they were divorced since I was like 6 months old. So not only were not coming to the same house every day, they had, you hear about divorced parents all the time trying to destroy one another, right. And it's always at the detriment of the child.
Yep.
And they were the absolute gold standard of how divorced parents need to raise a child. I never heard one or the other speak poorly about the other one, mm-hmm. And it was always about putting me in the best position. Yep. Obviously there were, with their separation, my dad had certain days he was supposed to see me, but whenever my dad called, my mom was like, absolutely, yep. Because she knew it was best for me. So I was very lucky to have them. You said it best, she said what she needed to say amongst her feelings and all of that, because yep. That's what I needed. Yep. And extremely lucky to have her, smart, successful, but strong. Right. And I needed that. And when I lost my dad, she stepped in a role that was probably uncomfortable for her and different because, I had lost my father and now I'm leaning it all on her to take the brunt. So I couldn't be more grateful for the parents I had, obviously for the way my dad was, but obviously for the strength that my mom showed. I think that, like I said, was a turning point for me in my life and probably the biggest moment that I had because everything changed after that conversation. And, we could talk about his leadership as well, but it was always a kind of actions speak louder than words. And, the way he would do things, I was watching everything. Yep. And that's what it was always about action.
And one more rep. He used to talk to you about getting yep. one more rep, and yep. That's how you built, who you are from a competitive standpoint. Hey, teammates, I want to tell you about a project we're working on with Youngstown State University. One of the ways Ellen and I have decided to give back is through the Tressel Institute for Leadership and Teamwork. We've collected a set of successful business and nonprofit leaders to serve as guest servant leaders in partnership with the Sokolov Honors College to teach university students teamwork, leadership, and personal skills. We teach from a foundation built on gratitude, excellence, hope, love, and selflessness. If you're a young person or parent helping to search for a unique college experience, you can learn more at tresselinstitute.ysu.edu or ysu.edu. Links will be provided in the show notes. So now we're at Ohio State.
Yep.
Blessed with Team Ebner.
Mm-hmm.
Blessed with really Team Rugby, which taught you a lot.
Mm-hmm.
You learned a lot. What a great experience with the traveling and the youth, and you earned your way, because people don't realize it's not like we can have 200 guys on the team. We had like 5 spots, 10 spots they were like gold. Yeah. And every position coach wanted someone at their, no, we need one more lineman, or no, we need one more receiver. Right. So you earned your way there. What I recall is not only your extraordinary work ethic and your performance in the tryouts and so forth, but I remember people from your community reaching out to me and talking about what kind of person you were. Because again, we didn't want to make mistakes. Yeah. We wanted the right people to be on our team. It's hard to have a good team if you don't have the right people.
Absolutely.
And that kind of blew my mind. I had never had, we had lots of guys want to walk on. And so we checked them out, see who ran the best or whatever. I had never had anyone from the outside come in and talk about someone like they talked about you. And that's something, that was good fortune for you. And I recall when you began playing that you knew the flow of rugby and you knew all the intricacies, the nuances and so forth, but football had its own set of them.
Absolutely.
And I remember Coach Haynes and I talking about, hey, this guy's pretty impressive. But we got a lot to learn.
A lot to learn.
So we sat there and we said, but the one thing that should happen the fastest is if we could get those one-play series, those special teams.
Yep.
And you don't need to know 9 coverages or, have looked at hours and hours of film.
Absolutely.
And that's the way your world began. And what was cool was that you were willing to do that for the team. Because, some guys are like, oh, no, I want to be involved in everything. And so I'm not going to focus.
Yeah,
right.
Absolutely.
So I think back to when first time you ran down a kickoff and, as you were progressing and every day, just so you know, we would sit down as a staff at the end of every spring practice or preseason or in season, and every day we talked about the performance of every kid.
Yep.
And that's just what we did.
Yep.
It was, and we graded you, if you recall.
Yep.
Every day you had a grade. And it was fun to listen, to, hey, you know what, this guy's going to be pretty good. I mean, this guy's going to be all right.
Yeah.
And to watch you progress and again, that's why I'm so excited about this episode, is because I don't know of any other stories like yours. So, but I'm going to keep trying to rein myself back into talking about team, okay? And so one thing you might remember from the Winner's Manual is that we always had, when I would meet with, and normally it was the 3rd year, 4th year, and 5th year guys, I would do all the surveying. I don't know if you recall that, and I don't know if you were there far enough along that I put you through that arduous 10-page survey. Maybe not, but anyway.
It must not have been so arduous for me.
Yeah, right.
I probably enjoyed it.
But one of the things that I always wanted to know from them was, as they reflected back, in one word, what would describe a certain team? And so then we would have a page in the Winner's Manual, and it would talk about, hey, the rising seniors and the 4th year juniors, here's what they said those teams were like that they were a part of. Just, snap.
Yes. First
thing that pops into your mind. And so this particular 2010 Winner's Manual, so that would have been guys like Justin Bourne, Brian Browning, Chimney Chekwa, Donnie Everidge, Boom Heron, Cam Hayward, Ross Holman, and on down the list. Those are the older guys at the time.
Yep.
Okay? And here's what they said about the teams they were on. And our whole point in discussing it was to get the entire team to start thinking about what do we want to aspire for someone to say about us.
Right.
You know, so the guys who were there for 5 years could go all the way back to the 2016, which was a great team.
Yeah.
Ended up losing the national championship. And so they talked about great, close, talented, experienced, disappointing leaders, almost, leadership, leaders. So their recollection of that team, what was special about it, sounded to me like the leaders, and we were good, you know. So then the guys that were there for 4 years, they had their whole list of things. And then what we tried to say is, hey, guess what? The ones that are positive, that's what we want to be. The ones that are negative, like, you know, let me find one that unfinished in 2007. Well, we lost the national championship.
Right.
You know, we don't want to be unfinished. We don't want someone to describe our team that way.
Absolutely.
And then we would talk about what are the goals, you old guys. When we talk to the young guys next year, you know, what's the goal that you hope they say about you? Hungry, toughest, delivered, dedicated, focused, team,
Yeah.
talented, best, you know, those were the things. So I'm going to do a little role play with you now, okay? Since I didn't get to do it, I didn't make it, you made it, but I didn't make it to your third year, okay?
Yeah.
So 2009 was your first season, correct?
Yes, it was.
Rose Bowl, beat Oregon.
Yes.
Is that the year? Okay.
Yes.
So if you're sitting here today in 2024, that's, you know, a long 15 years ago,
Yeah.
what would be the first thing that would come to your mind about that team? And it can only be one word.
So I need to not give a long explanation. It's tough for me because...
No, one word.
Okay.
Come on. I feel like I'm back in one of my individual meetings. You know?
I know, it's just, I don't even remember 15 years ago. Let me think here. I would say talent.
Okay.
From my experience, just because I didn't know what was going on.
Sure.
And right away, I felt so like Kurt Coleman's and Jake Ballard's and, you know, Terrell was on that team and just like, I was...
Yeah, that was talented.
Talented team.
So that was your first year playing, but your third year in college? Or second year in college?
That was my third year.
Third year in college, first year playing.
Yes.
Okay. And so then in 2010, what would be the word that would pop out?
I felt more a part of the team that year. I leaned towards team that year.
Team, okay.
And we had all the makings that year, and we were close.
Yeah.
I felt that year, in my opinion.
Yeah. Who did we were 12-1. Who did we lose to?
Wisconsin.
Was that J.J. Watt?
I think so. That was first kickoff of the game to the house.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Ooh. See, you remember that was personal.
It was
right?
personal.
Oh, man.
Double teamed.
All right, so 2011 was your year where you played the most.
Yes.
And one word there.
Broken.
Broken, okay. All right, now we go to the NFL. So you know what the viewers want to know is, you know, how did Bill Belichick go about building the team? And let me preface it before you answer. I asked that question a million times to guys that played there or guys that were scouts there or guys that were somehow affiliated because it puzzled me a little bit that sometimes guys that left there didn't do quite as well. And I would always ask the question, so what was so unique about what he did that could keep that level of consistency?
Are we still on one word?
No.
Because I've got...
No, you can't do it one word.
Well, I mean, to sum up Bill, I would say culture. And Bill didn't say stuff that you wanted to hear. Go back to that again.
Right.
He was all-encompassing. I think Bill was extremely transparent. I think he made the picture of the expectations very clear, so you knew exactly what you needed to do. Mm-hmm. And he lived up to what he said. And if you did your job and you knew what your expectations were and you fulfilled those, like, you had a spot on that team. And I think there's a lot of insecurity in the NFL. I mean, it's so cutthroat, and there's so many guys like trying to make it. You know, we've talked a little before the show about the revolving door that happens in the NFL.
Yep.
It's insane. So there's a lot of insecurity there. And, you know, Coach Belichick made it very clear what you needed to do. Yep. And you could either do it or you couldn't.
So as I listen, because of that insecurity and so forth, it is maybe harder to build team.
Yes. Because
of, you know, it's a business. It's people coming and going, and the things that you mentioned about Coach Belichick make perfect sense about someone who could build a team. I heard one other one about him, and it was not from the player, not from the person who was in the come and go part of it, but someone that was entrenched in the organization for a long time.
Yep.
And their point is that they thought not many people really knew how well he treated and took care of everyone regardless of their job.
Yep.
That he thought every person in that organization was important.
I think that comes from even Mr. Kraft. You know, Mr. Kraft was big on community and taking care of people, and Bill definitely let that shine through us. Of all the workers and employees in the organization, we talked about it a lot.
Yeah.
You know, made a point to be friendly and communicate with those that are serving us every day and make it easier for us every day. So he definitely did that. When I think about that more specifically about the team, about football, to go back to Ohio State where we talk about the walk-on and the special teams role that I had, and a lot of people say you got to be selfless to do that. Well, why do you have that opinion? You know, why do you have the opinion that you need to be selfless to take a special teams role versus another role? Like, why is that entrenched in your thought process?
Because you don't know how important it is.
Exactly.
Yep.
Because for whatever reason, your leadership throughout sports that you had showed you that this is unimportant, where Bill was the exact opposite. Bill did such a good job of encompassing the importance of every role. Our team meetings were so long because he would sit there, and he loved football, so he could talk about it all day. But he would go from, you know, the holder holding the ball on a field goal to the defensive lineman and his hand placement, taking on, you know, sacrificial lamb double team block and, you know, opening it up for the other player. He really, we had team meetings where he would show special teams clips for 20 to 30 minutes and just highlight how awesome it was and get the whole team hyped around these moments in the game that they didn't really see, and they're not going to go into the special teams meeting and watch.
Right.
So he would make sure everybody saw that and how important it was, and how you could be on the team meeting in front of everybody, in front of Tom Brady, if you do this well. And he really embodied that. And there'd be times where, you know, they'd show a touchdown pass Tom would throw, or a run, or a good tackle on the defense, but it was all encompassing. There were no, no favorites. And I see all around football in general, but even in the NFL, just that disconnect that the head coach, the leadership has with, you know, a special teams aspect of the game. And when they act like that towards it, we talk about actions, right? My dad's actions were kind of how I learned. I mean, when your leader's doing stuff like that, well, now you have the disposition that special teams is unimportant. You do need to be selfless to take that role, where in the Patriots, Bill showed so many special teams clips. It's like, you know, I was there for so long, and I was one of the guys, me and Matt Slater. It's like I was treated like, you know, Tom or Julian or you know, Dante Hightower, Devin McCourty. I was that of the special teams. So I was treated that way. And that trickle-down effect, you know, leaked into the rest of the team, and no one felt that way about special teams, really. And if you had that attitude coming in, you weren't the guy for this team.
Right.
And if you're not going to buy into that importance.
Society does that. I think, to your point of, I remember going into spring practices, and you talk to the media for the first time, and their question is, well, what are you going to work on this spring? What are we going to work on?
Yeah.
We're going to work on everything.
Right.
Everything is important.
Right.
Every guy is important. Well, which guys, no. Every guy is important.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's, I don't know how we've come to that people think that someone's less important.
I would say the majority of the information that we're getting about the thing we're all watching is coming from people who have no clear understanding, not even close to really like what's going on in there.
Right.
All the people writing about it, like they know football, they're there at practice and they watch the games and they read everything, but like you're not in that building.
Right.
Like you have no idea what our conversations are and how Bill talks about the team and how he shows, a kickoff return 50 times and doesn't show like an offensive highlight that was all over ESPN. Like we don't even see it the same way. So I can totally see why there's the disconnect. But at the end of the day, I don't like this, but it's kind of the world we live in. But as far as like what we can control as a team, that's kind of one of those cultural things. Ignore the noise.
Right.
That has nothing to do with us. All that we hear is in here.
Well, and that's the challenge we have, especially with young people. And that's why we've got to do a great job with it's all about the team, and we got to make sure it lasts for years and years.
Yeah.
Because young people have lots of noise.
Yes.
They got way more noise than I had.
Way more noise.
I mean, I had no noise. We had 3 channels, and at midnight it went snowy.
Every day I am appreciative of the fact that I grew up in high school without a smartphone.
Right? Yep.
I think it would be extremely difficult to come up right now.
It is. That's why we got to make a difference.
Absolutely.
We got to talk about this is real. Mm-hmm. It's harder.
I think it's hard to think what should I listen to?
Yeah.
Because there is so much noise, and it's like what is truthful, what's not. Who should I be following?
Right.
There's a lot of questions I could totally understand. So I'm absolutely with you. And in that scenario with the Patriots, it was whatever you're reading about culture-wise, talking about Tom, like it couldn't have been more different than how we were in the building.
Right.
And I think that's why we had so much success. It was culture-driven from the top, and it was walked out by Bill. He would show up early. He expected us to work hard. He worked hard. Man, that guy worked hard. Mm-hmm. So he's walking the walk. He ain't just talking. It's not just hot air coming out of his mouth. He's working hard too in his own capacity. Yep. He's driving a culture forward in what he says. He lives up to what he says. I think it was all about culture, and culture all about the team ultimately.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And that driven home and getting the right guys to buy in and having the strength as a leadership to get rid of someone who's maybe talented, more talented than someone we have, but they are not the right culture. They're not the right mindset. They're not going to sit in and maybe play a special teams play if we need them to. Something like that, having the strength to get rid of guys like that, because there were definitely teams more talented than us. Mm-hmm. That's what the NFL is. It's filled with talent. But when you put a culture of guys that just all see it the same way and are willing to die for one another, metaphorically speaking, in the field that we play on, and are willing to do anything, and you all see it the same way, it's hard to beat. Mm-hmm. It's hard to beat someone that's not going to quit.
You have to be capable talent-wise.
Yes.
You can have the greatest culture in the world, but if you have no talent, you're in trouble.
There's a threshold for sure.
But as long as we used to always say in our staff meetings, as long as we have capable talent.
Yes.
We don't have to have the most 5-star recruits or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely.
We got to be capable though.
Yep.
And if we can build that culture, that team, then we can probably, do anything we want to do. So which years did you win the Super Bowl? Which 20?
The season or the Super Bowl
season.
year? The season 2014.
So that was your first Super Bowl. What number was that? Like
49 versus Seahawks, the Malcolm Butler interception.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Should have given up 2 blocked punts in that game.
You guys had 2 blocked punts?
We should have.
Oh.
And it would have changed it, but we saved it and didn't happen. But
Wow.
The unseen play that
Yeah,
no one ever
well,
talked about. I
right.
mean, it was bad.
Yeah. So 14 you won it.
Yep.
16 you won it.
Yep, 2016,
And then-
51. And then 2018 season against the Rams, 53.
All right. So let's go back to 14.
If you want to go in between there, we lost to the Eagles, 52 in the Super Bowl.
17.
17.
2017, yeah.
Yep. And then in 2015, we lost to the Broncos in the AFC Championship. They beat the Panthers.
Wow.
And then 2012, we lost to the Ravens in the AFC Championship, and we lost to the Broncos one more time. I mean, there was a period of time where every game was either the Super Bowl or AFC Championship. For
So
like 7
were
years.
you ever in your 9 year, you were with them
8
9?
years, 8 years.
Were you ever not in the playoffs?
No.
No?
Only 1 year I didn't go to the AFC Championship in
Okay.
2019 when we lost to the Titans in like the first or second round.
So let's go to 14. Back to one word. Think of that 14 team.
I mean, team. I'm going to say that for all of them.
So 2016 was kind of crazy
Yeah.
because you went to the Olympics
Yes.
and you were all pro.
Yes.
You talk about a long year.
It was, but it was awesome.
So what month did you go? July to the Olympics?
No, I went to, the actual Olympics were like August 13th.
But when was the trials or
So
training?
we played the Denver Broncos in the AFC Championship in January 23rd, 2015. I was coming up on a new contract. Bill and I agreed to it. And amongst that contract talk, I said, Bill, I need to go do this. I need to go play in the Olympics. It's just something that's consumed me over the last year, and I just will not be able to live with myself if I don't do it. Again, kind of similar to my situation with my dad, where I talked about walking on. Bill right away was like, yeah, go for it. And I was kind of like, what? I didn't expect that. He's like, yeah, absolutely. When will you be done? Season doesn't start till September. So he was on board. It was crazy. Hung up the phone, calls me the next day. It's like, hey, we need to put something in your contract. It's not like you're going sailing, just in case you get hurt. I'll never forget that.
Wow.
It's not like you're going sailing.
Yeah.
I said, I can understand that.
Yeah.
I was under the impression I would go, not get a contract, trying to fight my way back into the league, and I was willing to accept that. To have their support instantly, and then the whole organization supported me, it was crazy. And again, testament to Bill. So January 23rd, play the Broncos in the AFC Championship, lose by like 1 point. Anyways, I'm not mad about it. And then talked with Bill through February, and by March, first week of March, I think, or second week of March, I was in training camp in Chula Vista, California with the Sevens team, and that was where it started. I mean, I probably had about 5 weeks, and then insane training. I mean, the physical demand that required was way more than anything football ever, and it wasn't even close. Now, football is a little more violent,
Right.
bigger, explosive, more direct in the philosophy of the way the game is played, but rugby sevens, which is the Olympic sport, just the cardiovascular demand, but at the same time, it's a very physical sport.
How big is
It
the
was
field?
hard. Soccer field.
Whew.
So yeah, you're
So only 7 guys on that
7
giant
guys
field.
on a giant field. Yeah, it's insane. So I had to transition. I'm a 4 to 6 second explosive person that that's what I do. And here we got you could go for 5 or 6 minutes without stopping and get in a wrestling match, tackle, whatever, run 70 yards, turn around, do it again, chase somebody. I mean, I had to change, and that was hard. That was very hard.
Did you lose weight?
Oh yeah. I lost probably a good 12 pounds and at least 10, and I was doing everything I could not to, eating waffles and pancakes and all that, but it just couldn't keep it on. It was just such high demand. So throughout the summer I trained, went on tour to Hong Kong and Singapore and France and, England. And then, I kind of eventually hit my stride through that and, shook the rust off, went back to when I was at Ohio State in the CRCs that kind of had my flow about me, and I was in shape the way I wanted to be. And then in July, June and July, we had the actual Olympic training camp where they had about 25, 26 guys that were there to make a 12-man roster to represent the United States in the Olympics for rugby. And that was about a 5-week camp, 6-week camp, and that's where I really came through and had a lot of success. We played a warm-up game in Florida, and then, opening ceremonies were probably beginning of August.
And where was the Olympics that year?
In Rio, Brazil.
Okay.
Yeah, Rio de Janeiro.
Wow.
And did that. I think one of the biggest mistakes in my life was that I didn't stay at the Olympic Village long enough after the Olympics. You know, I told Bill.
Race back.
Told Bill. They were in training camp. We were in a mutual practice with the Chicago Bears at the time. And I told Bill, I'll be on a plane the next day. So, we competed. I had like one day in Rio, and I was on a plane, and everybody stayed. I wish I would have stayed. But I get back, and we're practicing with the Chicago Bears. Mike Adams was actually with the Bears at the time, so I hollered at him. But everyone was happy to see me, and they had me run a conditioning test, I remember, with all my pads on, and it was I ran like way further than I was supposed to, and the coach never told me. And they told me they weren't going to make me run a conditioning test, but I was in good shape from rugby, so it was funny. But anyways, I think the personal journey that I had gone through in that 6-7 months from, walking on, really longer than that, walking onto the football team at Ohio State, having success, getting to the NFL, and then, this was everything we talked about, making it to the NFL, having success, and here I am leaving it to go play rugby and putting it all at risk, and I was at peace with that. And having done that, having success, I had this personal transformation of just, I like to call it my effort went up because I knew I was okay, whether I had football or not.
Right.
And I think a mixture between that release of, I want this so bad, this NFL thing so bad, that tension I put on it, letting that go, in a mixture with, rugby. I tackled somebody every day, multiple times a day. That helped. I went and had a great season in 2016, and then we obviously made it to the Super Bowl and had a great game against the Falcons. And it was 2016
Anything
was a great year.
team-wise you learned from the rugby experience that you thought helped when you came back to football?
I think originally, in my journey, having grown up around rugby, having been implanted in this culture of selflessness and guys that are, no one's a celebrity, no one's special, and we're all here together. And just the philosophy of rugby in the regular game of 15s, 15 on 15, one guy scores. And everything else is a combination of people putting that together so they can eventually score. And the culture behind rugby is so much, it's so not a me thing. And growing up with that leadership in my father, who talked about, just as Bill talked about special teams and preached it as just as important and can change the game as any other aspect of us winning. My dad talked about, did you see the pass before the guy scored? Or did you see how hard that guy worked so he could get the ball so the guy could score at the end? And he had that same affinity for the hard work that went in that really no one saw or didn't get the accolades of the actual score, touchdown, try itself. So I always had that, not only from my father, but from the culture that rugby exposes you to. It's a team game. And that from rugby transitioned me into coming to Ohio State. I've always said walking on to the football team at Ohio State was the most humbling thing I ever did in my life because I was a good athlete. I was playing against some of the best players in the world in rugby, but I didn't know what I was doing.
Right.
And we talked about that. So, me playing special teams, those one-play series, I could run down and make a tackle, and I never once felt like, oh, man, I'm doing this for the team. I felt honored. It was all about making the bus for me. I remember Coach Haynes saying, you got to make the bus. And I shout out to Coach Haynes. He really pushed me in that direction of special teams. And, he painted a picture for me I didn't know there was. I'll never forget him saying, there's guys that play 10 years in the NFL and mainly play special teams. And that's exactly what I ended up doing. And, that I got very frustrated at Ohio State because I thought I had to play defense, right? You got your scholarship guys. I don't know what's going on, and I'm not getting reps, and I'm just like, how am I going to make this work? And, while it wasn't part of my original vision before I went into the, things change.
Right.
When I walked onto that football team, I'm going to beat everybody out, and I'm going to have to be the starting safety or whatever it is. But I started to realize, things change. I need to pivot and do that the best that I can, but I need to get on this bus and play. And Coach Haynes helped with that. But again, I never felt like that was me, taking one for the team. I'm on the bus. Yeah. I'm playing for Ohio State. I'm running down on kickoffs, making plays. Maybe I'll knock a ball loose and change the game. I never thought of it as like a, pity party. I never felt sorry for myself. But I think that came from the rugby culture that I was brought up in, and it helped me throughout my career. And I had leaders like you who said the most important play in football is punt. And you have that driven from the leadership. Like I said, you had my dad, you had Bill doing the same thing. It was very easy for me to give everything I had to fulfill that role the best that I could.
Did the guys on the Patriots ask you about rugby and what it's like? And they had to be kind of clueless, right?
Yeah, everybody is at first, it's like, how much do you want to give them? But a lot of guys were interested in, I think when I went to the Olympics, Bill stopped practice and had everybody come in the team room, and they all just watched me play. I mean, how cool was that? Yeah. To just, what we're doing is important, but this is one of our guys, and we're going to support him. And that was just so cool. And a lot of guys asked me a lot about rugby and how I got into it, and it looked like a cool sport and whatnot. But going back to your first comment of this conversation, I would say you're more crazy playing football than you are to play rugby.
Is that right?
Absolutely. Football's way worse.
Well, it's big bodies.
Yes. Coming right at each other. And a lot of speed, where rugby just has the different rule set. You can't hit people if they don't have the ball. It's a safer, not right at each other, but you don't have helmets on, so you can't be afraid of a little blood.
Well, some people say that football should take the helmets off and there'd be less injuries.
I just think the philosophy of the game. I mean, what's a 3rd and 1 play going to look like if you do that?
Yeah, right.
That's the way the game is.
It'll be a grab tackle.
Yeah. Or somebody's head's going to get knocked off.
Right.
I don't think that's the right answer. But
we can talk about it's not.
We can talk about that all day.
Hey, teammates! I just want to briefly interrupt one more time to give a shout out to a great local manufacturing company, Compco, as a sponsor for our journey. We aren't going to be helping them sell much of their product of steel tank heads on this podcast. They just believe in the mission of teamwork and intentional selflessness. I've known the Smith family since my coaching days at YSU. They've been a beacon in the Youngstown area, providing great jobs and supporting our community through youth programs and local nonprofits like the United Way. The Smith family have been instrumental in backing this project from the start. Thanks to the whole Compco team for joining us sight unseen on this exciting venture. These are team-first people. So, one of the many things I was proud of as I reflected about you was, all of a sudden, was it Joe Judge? Was that the name of the guy?
Joe Judge.
So Joe Judge goes and becomes the head coach of the New York Giants.
Yep.
And he says, I got to bring someone like Nate Ebner to help reinforce what I want to try to build.
Absolutely.
And so, talk me through, were you at a contract free agency moment? Or?
Well, I was at a free agency moment, and, I was definitely older. My knees were kind of getting worn out, a lot of miles, and I knew I probably had about a couple years at most in me left, just physically.
Right.
And, Bill and I talked, and he said, this is about what it's going to be. We want you here. Obviously, you've been a leader on the team, but this is what it's going to be. And I talked to Joe, and from a financial situation, it made more sense for me to go to New York. It was no ill will. It was strictly a financial, what's best for Nate situation. And a small part of me wanted to see, I've been at Ohio State. I've been with the New England Patriots during a dynasty run. And I kind of want to see how another organization functions. You know, I really did. I wanted to see
if you could help it.
See if I could help it, and just see if there were any glaring, you know, instances of, wow, this is why we had success and this is why. And that actually was very apparent to me when I got to New York, for sure.
Well, we always used to say it's exhausting to be great, and it takes time to be great. And how many years had the Patriot way been there by the time you got there? And so you didn't have to teach as many people. Right. Well, now you go and start over. Starting over is hard.
Well, I would say with that, you've always got the new team, the new regime coming in, but it's a lot easier to teach culture when it's not just hot air coming from the top guy and you have it already ingrained in your system. You've got Tom Brady, you know? You've got Matthew Slater. You've got these guys at the Patriots that when I come in as a rookie, I'm like, not only is Bill preaching this, but Tom actually walks it out, and that's Tom Brady. You know, same thing. You got Matt Slater, those guys and it's very easy to fall in line. It's one thing when you got a coach talking about something and then there's no example being set throughout the organization. And I think Joe tried to do that valiantly with New York. We had such a young team, and the guys that were there felt like they were veterans, having only been there for 2 years, and you got older guys coming in who never worked that hard. And it was just really hard to establish. And to what you said, to build that from the core is a very difficult thing to do. But you look around the league and there's some teams doing it. The Texans, I think, have figured it out a little bit. There's a couple other, but that's one that shines to me.
But you do need as the leader, trying to build the culture, you need to be fortunate. I know when we came to Ohio State in 2001, I'm coming from 1AA, and you know, not one of those kids knew who I was. But I'll give them credit, even though they were sometimes like, you know, looking at us sideways, that they'd never talked about those things or never done it that way or whatever. They hung in there and wanted to give us a chance. And then really by the end of the year, spending a year together, and then the good news is at a place like Ohio State is, I don't care how you're doing all year long, you still have that one, and if you win that one at the end, life is good for at least another year. And so we were fortunate.
We were.
You know, that we won that one at the end of 2001, and then all of a sudden, the real good players, like you said, were talking, you know, about the culture, and but it's hard. And so you had 2 seasons there?
2 seasons with the Giants,
So give me a one word for each of those 2 years, because that's different than what you experienced before.
The first year, I would say hungry.
Okay.
But hunger doesn't equate to anything.
No, right.
But I felt that with the young guys and the new organization.
Just didn't know how to eat.
Didn't know how to eat.
Right.
That's exactly right. Didn't know how to eat.
Yep.
The next year, maybe this is a little bit of me. Well, no, we had a terrible season too. I used broken before. I'm going to use shattered. Because it was probably one of the worst things I've seen. And I felt like it started at the top, from the non-football playing execs and professionals that are supposed to be running an organization, and the misalignment with something like that. You know, I think about Bill Belichick and Robert Kraft. You know, however they may feel about each other is whatever, but Robert Kraft is always going to be one of the best owners for me, because he tries to build his community and he wins football games. And how he wins football games is he picked the best person that he could to coach, and then he let them do it. And Bill had the role of kind of a GM coach. Obviously, special person, been around the game long enough that he could actually do something like that. But you had a leader in Kraft who allowed that. And then Bill took that on as his responsibility and did really well. And then you can build that culture. You can bring in the type of players that you want, get rid of the ones that don't match up, that are going to fracture your team. Bill had that control, and because of that, I think we had a lot of success. I think that guy at quarterback was pretty good too. That probably helped our success as well. Yeah. But the culture was definitely there around Tom.
Well, and every bit of it was important. That's what people lose sight of.
Absolutely.
Now, was it critical? Here's what I've always said as a non-NFL guy.
Yeah.
If I had to say, if you made me prioritize what we need, after I argue with you that we need all 53, and we need the trainers, and we need the owner, and but I would say probably in this order what we need. Number one, we need the right owner.
Yeah.
Because it does start from the top. And the players, even though they don't deal every day with the owner, the messaging, Number two, I would probably say the quarterback. And a distant 3 through 56 is the rest of us.
Yeah.
And I say that as a coach because if you're a coach with the right owner and you have a quarterback in that NFL-driven quarterback world, now you could build that culture of team. That, to me, that's your competency.
100%.
And now if we build a team, we got a chance.
Well, I mean, Tom's no good if he has no one to throw the ball to.
That's right.
Or no one's blocking for him. He's getting sacked every play.
Yep.
But ultimately, he was able to be who he was because the people around him really gave him an opportunity to do that.
Yep.
And that started with the culture for
sure. When Coach D'Antonio was with us, both at Youngstown State and Ohio State, I used to always like it when he'd talk about his definition of an impact player. His definition was an impact player is someone who can raise everyone else up. Some people say an impact player is someone with these stats and this and that. He said, no, an impact player is the one that can help raise everyone else's level.
Yeah.
And in the NFL, your quarterback needs.
Tom was one of those for sure.
Right? And it's not just on the offensive side.
Yeah,
I learned this when I was a young head coach and we had a great quarterback. And then he graduated, and then we were struggling. All of a sudden, our defense wasn't as good because they didn't believe that. I don't know how many times we got to stop them, but we're not going to score enough.
Right.
So, you need to have that. But now, where's Coach Judge now?
Coach Judge went back to New England.
Okay.
But now that's done. He's done with the Giants contract, so he can actually get a real job with a coaching role other than like an assistant. But I would just say, going back to that conversation, Coach Judge is trying to do what he can to build a culture. And then when you've got the GM or ownership or someone ahead of him who's, it seems like at odds with every decision he makes, and these two can't function up here. And he's trying to build culture, but we're bringing in guys that aren't right for the culture, or we're keeping guys that, we shouldn't be here. The way the trickle-down effect to when guys start to get hurt and you start to face adversities and turmoil throughout the season, how your team can handle those things, well, they're not as good when you don't have the right culture in place. And then guys, like we talked about earlier, got to start taking roles that they didn't sign up for.
Right.
You signed up to play football, but you didn't think you were going to do this, and how that fractures your team. And it just seemed like everywhere you looked, that small crack from the beginning just turned into cracks all over the team. It was crazy.
There's more good coaches than there are good jobs.
Yeah.
And I don't mean that the New York Giants aren't a good job. I'm not saying that. But it just sometimes...
people don't realize
you don't have a chance.
I try to speak to that for Joe on my behalf when I can, because I saw it as a captain on the team, as a leader, as a veteran player, as someone who's been a part of an organization that had a lot of success. And then I see the interaction with, how he just was, hands were tied behind his back as a coach. How can you expect us to have that kind of success when he's dealing with what he's dealing with, and he should be focused on players and plays?
Well, I'll end with this about the importance of the team, the culture. We've seen evidences of coaches, and I'm sure of people in business, that didn't do well here, but when they got to the place that had the right team,
absolutely,
all of a sudden, hey, that guy's not so bad of a CEO or a coach or a manager or whatever. It is all about the team, and we're just at the beginning stages of trying to add value to our viewers, our listeners, about the importance of team. And I want to have you back more and more and more because, as I've told you, your experiences, your story, your passion for the team is something I admire, and I appreciate you spending time with us. And it was a great hour. I hope I didn't go too long. Sometimes,
I could talk to you about this for another 2 hours if we needed to, but I think there's so much to say, and you can say it in so many different ways and give so many different examples. And I think I'm very fortunate to have such a kind of clear understanding of why I've had success and why teams I've been a part of have had success, and the way I was brought up, and the leaders I've had in my life, and it's very clear. And as much as I can communicate that and give examples to people to help them any way I can, I would love to do that.
We got to pass it on because it's all about the team. See you the next time.
If you really want to know the mindset of what team looks like, all you have to do is look at the jersey.
We have to be intentional about trying to be as selfless as we can.
You say protect and serve, but the definition of serve, you have to listen to that, right? It means everything.
Constant reinforcement of it's all about the team is so important.
When you are talking about anything this team does, whether it's you've done an assessment, an investigation, it doesn't matter. It's always going to be we.